James, what was the point that you were trying to get across when you went to Atlanta and Vegas when training camp was starting?
I was just training.
What were you training for?
It started the NBA season.
How did going to Atlanta and Vegas help you there when the Rockets were starting training camp in Houston?
Just my personal trainers.
James, now that you've been in camp for about a week, do you feel any better about this situation now than you did before you arrived?
Next question.
So I woke up this morning and thought to myself, you know what, Mike? You've been daily uploading for each and every day for the past month. You don't really need to get any content done for today. And then I checked my uploads and I realized something absolutely terrible has truly happened. We haven't made a James Harden video in 6 whole days. And we cannot just let that be. That is just truly an abomination to this channel. So we needed to make this video today. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here. And before I get to the content, I just want to let you guys know we're giving away a PlayStation 5 to a lucky member of Mike Mafia that subscribes and hits that notification bell. Whether you're an old subscriber or a new subscriber, if you sub and hit that notification bell, you have officially entered for a chance to win a PlayStation 5. If you want additional entries, follow us on Twitter and or Instagram, and that's a great way for you to get your takes featured on our channel. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Guys, the talk about James Harden potentially getting traded was a huge topic in the month of December. Yet, we have yet to see James Harden get traded, and there might be a variety of reasons why that has not come to be, and we're going to dive into that in this video. The very first reason is the fact that the Houston Rockets asking price for James Harden might be a tad bit too steep, and who could really blame them? When you're trading a player that had 44 points and 18 assists in his debut, despite being clearly 12 pounds overweight, fresh off of a trip from Las Vegas strip clubs, well, chances are you're going to want a lot in return to give up that star player. But let's take a look at each and every team that could potentially make a move for James Harden, starting with the Brooklyn Nets, who would have to sacrifice a decent amount of their depth in order to get James Harden. Is it really worth giving up players like Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, and Jarrett Allen, alongside with a couple of first-round picks, in order to get yourself a third superstar? Is it really that necessary for the Brooklyn Nets to do so in order to make it out of the Eastern Conference as the top team, or even challenge the Western Conference for NBA supremacy and a potential NBA championship? Well, if you ask me, the answer is no. I will always opt for a model that is based off of 2 superstars and those 2 superstars being surrounded by adequate depth in order to not only allow both players to play to their fullest potential, but to preserve them for the duration of their careers. If you have a lot of depth, you're not going to have to put as much pressure on those top 2 stars, and the results could even be a prolonged career for both of those stars. Then you get to the Philadelphia 76ers, who just somehow, someway are always going to be in the James Harden conversation. Currently, at the time of this video, the Philadelphia 76ers have won 2 of their games. They've only lost 1 of their games, and no matter what, even if they're at the very top of the East, you're always going to hear James Harden to Philadelphia rumor just based off of the fact that Daryl Morey once said this about him.
You know, someone asked me who's a better scorer, him or Michael Jordan, and it's just factual that James Harden is a better scorer than Michael Jordan.
Based on the math.
Based on literally, like, you give James Harden the ball, and before you're giving up the ball, how many points do you generate, which is how you should measure offense.
But the fact of the matter remains that I believe Daryl Morey is a fairly smart general manager, and he would not easily give up a 23-year-old all-star in Ben Simmons in order to take back James Harden, no matter how much he loves James Harden. But this is one take I could be absolutely wrong on. You never know how much Daryl Morey loves James Harden, so it could potentially happen. You then look at the Boston Celtics, and I just can't see the Boston Celtics giving up Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, or in this case, probably a combination of Jaylen Brown, some other young stars, and some future picks in order to get James Harden back. The Celtics seem extremely invested in Jaylen Brown's development and Jason Tatum's development, and I don't think the acquisition of James Harden would make the Boston Celtics championship contenders, so why would you make your team older for no reason? On top of that, I don't think Jason Tatum and James Harden's playing styles would mesh with one another because both of them do most of their damage with the ball in their hands. I heard rumors about the Toronto Raptors even being interested in James Harden, but I can't even think of a package that would potentially have the Houston Rockets pouncing on an offer from the Toronto Raptors, unless they want to give up Pascal Siakam, but I don't see that happening either because he's significantly younger, and it's not like the acquisition of James Harden would be able to push the Toronto Raptors towards a championship. So that means James Harden might stay in Houston for quite some time. And I believe James Harden is starting to come to grips with that, because if you guys remember a while ago, the reason why this entire dilemma and saga began was because James Harden and Russell Westbrook weren't really excited about the direction that the Houston Rockets were taking. Moving on from Daryl Morey and moving on from Mike D'Antoni pretty much signaled to both of these stars that the Rockets are no longer going to be pursuing a championship. And when you go out and hire a first-year head coach in Silas, although he could be a remarkable coach, and so far, based off of what I'm seeing, he does seem like a remarkable coach for the Houston Rockets, it could convey to your superstar players that, hey, we're going to try to start rebuilding. Well, after weeks and weeks of turmoil, of not showing up to training camp, of partying in Vegas with Lil Baby, of going to a dinner/strip club/club just to support your homegirl who just got promoted, James Harden finally discussed how he felt about his brand new head coach, saying that he did a great job. He's very confident and knew what he was drawing up and knew where to put his guys at. And Silas's reaction to that is pretty nice as well, saying it means a lot when any player says that they like what you do, especially as a new head coach. A lot of the things I'm doing are things I believe in and have seen, but until you do that, to get feedback from him and the other guys have been gratifying, and I'm happy about that. Now, look, we don't want to blow this out of proportion. For all you know, James Harden could just be content where he's at. He could be trying to fill up the stat sheet as much as he can, try to show his commitment to basketball as much as possible, so the Houston Rockets have no trouble finding a good trade partner for him so they could trade him to a championship contender. Nevertheless, I want to bring a couple of points to your attention about the Houston Rockets so far, because they are significantly more promising than you think they are. So far, the only member of the Houston Rockets that we saw that was a brand new addition to this roster ever since this past year was Christian Wood. And I want to give a shout out to my man on Twitter that put this compilation together, because it's a very wild claim to go out and compare a player like Christian Wood to Anthony Davis. But you could see shades of Anthony Davis's game influencing Christian Wood. And this is before you get DeMarcus Cousins and John Wall back. So I think it's starting to become more and more clear for James Harden that the Houston Rockets are actually contending. But in order to contend, you don't necessarily need to go out and bring in big name superstar players. As a matter of fact, you could go out and make low-key signings such as Christian Wood and DeMarcus Cousins, and bring in John Wall, which has tremendous chemistry with DeMarcus Cousins, although DeMarcus Cousins will probably have a minor role this year because he's coming off of 2 major injuries. But having John Wall as your sidekick, who isn't going to be demanding the ball nearly as much as Russell Westbrook, who practically craved filling the stat sheet as much as James Harden did, could be remarkable for James Harden. Having a head coach like Silas, who's a little bit more rough, because I'm assuming since he comes from the Rick Carlisle coaching tree, who is a very no-nonsense type of guy, has a lot of emphasis on the defensive side of the floor, as opposed to Mike D'Antoni, who is more of a glorified yes man that just wanted James Harden to execute his offense and then would let him do whatever he wants. This could be exactly what James Harden needs to get to the next step of his career. And it looks like the Houston Rockets gave James Harden that. And at first he kind of threw a tantrum, but it appears as though There's even a chance that James Harden is beginning to realize this and that James Harden is going to be coming around. If you ask me, I think the best place for James Harden to be in terms of his career is the Houston Rockets. And that's because if you're on the Houston Rockets are going to be doing whatever it takes to keep James Harden happy. They're going to be building a team around James Harden, whereas if he goes to another team like the Brooklyn Nets, he's no longer the guy on the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets are 7-Eleven's team. Yeah, if he goes to Philadelphia would probably be his team, but you get what I am saying. If you ask me, the best team that is built around him for right now is the Houston Rockets, and he should at least give them a few months, at least to the trade deadline, to determine whether or not he should still try to be traded to another team. And if it doesn't work this year, then his contract is significantly more tradable next year. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think? Maybe take to Instagram or Twitter to give me your ideas and impressions so I can feature you guys in future content. Aside from that, this might be my last upload in a couple of days, guys. I'm taking a little bit of a vacation from Wednesday to Sunday. So if I don't see you guys until then, I'm your boy, TheFlightMike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.